good morning, guys.
Morning.
Welcome to the MERAKI Table Talk. Today, we're going to talk about how to look after your financial health and well-being. I'm Deborah Skyers from MERAKI Consult, and with me, we have Sejal Patel from MERAKI Consult as well. We also have our guest. Hi, Roneish. Roneish Myers is the financial coach. She provides financial guidance to individuals as well as organisations. Her background is working with large corporate organisations such as St. Ives, Netflix, and she's a money enthusiast, so she enjoys giving advice to individuals and loves talking about money. How are you today, Roneish?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you both for having me here.
You're welcome, you're welcome. It's such an important subject, particularly, post-COVID, in terms of the situations that a number of individuals and organisations find themselves in. So we really want to talk about money. Okay, so my first question really is, why are some people really uncomfortable about talking about money?
Very good question, and it's a combination of things. It's embarrassment, it's shame, it's guilt. It's just so many different things, and it's how people see themselves and how they see money. I think in our culture as well, I know in our culture, as British people, we don't talk about money,
Yeah.
so that as well. Also not being brought up in an environment as well where money has been a discussion. So these things have an effect on why people don't talk about money. Especially in certain workplaces, it's very frowned upon to actually even discuss what salary one may be on. And actually, I remember working for one organisation many years ago. It was a small organisation, and I remember a couple of my colleagues had discussed their salary amongst themselves and realised that, there was a difference in their pay. And I remember the boss being really upset about it, because in their mind, why would you talk about your pay? But millennials are talking about their pay. They want to know that they're being paid fairly. So there are pros and there are cons for talking about money. So yeah, it's just about having that conversation and starting it. But I think it should be something that we talk about. I don't think it should be something we're frowned upon. And a lot of us may be in debt or not in a position that we want to be. So that's where the embarrassment comes in. That's where the guilt comes in. Not maybe being able to do things for our families that we want to do. So then we feel bad. So yeah, it sort of starts with a lot of mindset work, how you've been brought up, your journey. And yeah.
It's interesting you talk about millennials, and I know one of the things you want to do is inspire the next generation. So it seems as though that generation is more comfortable about talking about money. Is that something that you've found, or in comparison to the older generation being uncomfortable and younger generation,
So I typically work with individuals who are, 28 and above, so sort of mid-career. But I just I've done master classes with younger groups, and they're very open that they don't know things. Okay. I think the older generation will act like they know what they're doing when they don't. So that's one thing that I've picked up. They want to know how to do things. Obviously, there is a difference in how the older generation deal with money and the younger generation. So millennials are very instant. They will buy things now. They're living in the moment. Experiences are very important for individuals, whereas for the maybe older generation, it's about making sure your foundation's right. You've got your house in place, you've got savings, you've got all these different things in place. But yeah, that's just something that I've picked up. I mean, this is a big conversation in itself. But yeah.
It is a big conversation, Roneish, and it's interesting because it's a conversation that I'm having currently with my son, who's starting university soon. So, you know, we've been looking at, you know, different ways for him to actually fund his university, you know, so we've looked at obviously loans, student loans. He's thinking about getting a part-time job, and also thinking about sort of mum and dad's bank as well to help and support him through it. So it is, you know, it is a big point of discussion, I think, currently. I think it's great actually that they are more open at that age, and they're thinking more about sort of their future, and they're not fearful about having those conversations. You mentioned, you know, fair sort of pay, equality in pay also, and I personally have found it very difficult to broach that subject with my past employers, you know, where I've applied for a job or been promoted, etc. I think, you know, our male counterparts probably find it a lot more easier to have that conversation, you know, and ask for what they feel that they actually are worth. And women tend to kind of shy away from that conversation, and you know, don't tend to, you know, put what they want or what they feel they should get on the table. It's also a common problem in a lot of relationships, money. You know, whether, you know, we should have a joint account or a separate account, you know, partners thinking, you know, I'm always thinking my husband spends more than me. You know, I'm always like, you know, you need to stop, you know, because I'm thinking about, you know, not necessarily not having enough, but, you know, it's making sure that, you know, I'm able to pay for things. I've got 2 teenage kids, and I want to make sure that, you know, I'm able to, you know, provide them a lifestyle, provide for them as well, you know, a foundation for them to build on, and then, you know, set them up for their career. Now, there are a lot of different relationships we have personally with money itself. What, in your view, are they, and how can people improve their relationships with money?
Again, another brilliant question. So a lot of my clients will say, I get paid really well, but I can't see my money. I just feel like I'm paying bills. I'm living to pay bills. And that's not a very good place to be, because, you know, just work, you're in this sort of vicious cycle. You're not living. You're just waking up, going to work and paying bills and paying back debt that you may have taken out, for example. And so it's so important that we have a plan for our lives, and especially financially. And I think this is something that we don't necessarily consider. We plan for holidays, we plan for all these other sort of occasions and things that we want to do, but financially we don't typically plan. And so it's understanding where our money's going and why it's going there. And one way that individuals can do this is by tracking. And what that means is recording where your money's going on a weekly or monthly basis. And it sounds boring, it sounds, you know, long, but it's so important that you understand where your money is going. You know, how much money do you spend? You know, what is your net worth? You know, and these are questions that we need to be having with ourselves. We need to understand that. And then at that point, we have a choice whether we want to change it. So it's about owning where we are. So, you know, we may have made certain financial choices which doesn't favor us currently, but we have a choice to make a change. And that's why planning financially, and even having the discussion, you know, we spoke earlier about not speaking up about money. If you don't speak up and you don't know what you're doing, how can you get the help that you may need? There is so much help available, but because people don't speak up, they don't get the help that they need. And so it's really important. You know, I was reading an article about mental health, and, you know, 1.5 million people in Britain have mental health issues due to finance. and it's a big stat.
It's staggering. It's staggering, that number, 1.5 million. That's a lot of people. A huge number, right? There's still a problem, right? There are still people out there who are worried about money, and their money issues affect them and their mental health and well-being.
Absolutely.
In terms, just going back to what you said about sort of the relationship and tracking your money and also being able to find a way to address the money issues that you have, I can totally resonate. I mean, it was something that I grew up doing, because my dad, believe it or not, when we were younger, and I think it's him having come from India, with nothing really when he came to this country, so he had to start over, so it was important for him to track his money. He needed to track what was coming in and then what was going out for him to live, basically, and provide for my mum, and at that time myself. And as myself and my siblings were growing up, he used to make us write down and account for the money that he gave us. So if he gave me £10, I had to actually physically write where that money went.
Oh, I love that. I like actually, my kind of guy.
So that was one of the things that he said that we must do, and I did that throughout to university, and I'm still doing that at the moment. It annoys my husband, but it's something that I'm so used to. It's a habit. It's important for me to know where it's going, what I'm paying for, and actually assessing whether I can make a change and make savings, where I can. The other thing that he said to me that stayed with me, that there's always a way. If you know that there is an issue, or there's something that you need to manage or address, you can get support out there. There is advice that you can tap into. There are people out there, financial advisors, people like yourself, the financial coach, that can actually support you in actually better managing your money and your finances. And the third thing that he taught me, and again that stayed with me, is that once you know your position, you can actually take risks, and those are calculated risks. So if you're looking at investing money, or buying a particular business, or I don't know, a product of some sort, if you know what your position is, and you're able to address, or in terms of position, take the worst case scenario, then you're able to then go forward with that investment. So those were three things that that stayed with me. So it's the tracking, the support, help you can get once you know your position, and if you need that help, and then taking sort of calculated risks in terms of investment.
It's interesting to say that, because I had the complete opposite in terms of lack of financial advice from from growing up, and it was always the bank of dad, and it was never ending, always flowing. So I was never challenged on looking after money. I think I learned that the hard way when the bank of dad was no longer there. And some of the tips that I had, I use to this day. I used to have an entertainment card. So I had my bank card, which had my salary would go into that account, but I'd have an entertainment budget, and that would be for drinks with friends and after work, because there was lots of them. So and I think as soon as I was getting near to my budget, it'd be like, well, actually, I'll miss out on that particular drink. And I began to say no, in terms of, I think that's sufficient amount of money to spend a month on drinks with colleagues. There were times when I transferred money into that account to my main account, but I think it kind of put a check in the back of my head in terms of how much are you spending on entertainment and what are you doing with your money. I set up a spreadsheet with my outgoings as well, because again, trying to manage and control what I spend, I was able to see it in the same way that I was managing staff and managing my own budget at work. I began to apply the same principles at home. and it helps me as well. So it's very much about the principles that you learn when you're a child. Obviously, you know, your dad was great at that. I learned later on in adulthood, and it was painful. But nonetheless, I learnt, and it helped me obviously progress and save and do the things I wanted to do in my life.
And I think that's
sorry, I was just going to say, and I think that's key, because it doesn't matter where you are. Like, you can start wherever you are right now, and that's the most brilliant thing. It doesn't matter if you've made some bad financial decisions or good ones. It may not even be a bad thing. It may be that you just want to elevate and you want to grow. How can you maximize your money, and you're not entirely sure how to do that? And that's why it's important to invest in people who know what they're doing, but also invest in yourself, so that you educate yourself.
Yeah, no, I agree, absolutely. I think, you know, it's valuable information for, you know, everyone, wherever they are in their life, in terms of position financially, you know, to understand what those principles are, and, you know, once applied, how that can benefit them in their life and their career, or whatever path they choose to take. So just going back to health and well-being, it was something that, you know, you said, you know, so 1 in 5, you said, of 1.5 million people who are affected by, you know, mental health issues.
Exactly. The reason for it is the cause of being in debt, being overwhelmed, and that's had a knock-on effect on their health. And so it's really important that we look after ourselves, because, as the stat said, 1 in 5 people suffer with mental health issues because of finances. And it's something that I don't think that we really consider. It's not something that's really focused on, and there needs to be more focus on looking after yourself financially and getting the education that you need, or getting the support that you need, and speaking to family and friends about it. You know, sometimes we can be distracted, you know, because of the fear of missing out, you know, we have to go out with our friends. But actually, if you were to say to your friend, look, I'm trying to clear my credit card, you know, I'm sure they would support you and not invite you out, or maybe find an alternative. So it's just about being creative. You know, you don't have to go for drinks. You can, you know, go to the park or do things that cost less. So it's just about changing the mindset. It doesn't mean that you stop doing things. I think a lot of the time when we hear financial planning and budgeting, it's like restriction. It's we feel we feel trapped, and it's not about being trapped. It's just about having some structure in your finances, having a game plan. You know, we all have financial goals, you know, and if you don't, you should have some financial goals. You need to know what your situation is and where do you want to go. And at that point, if your goals are non-negotiable, you will do what it takes to make it happen. A lot of us have big goals. You know, we want to clear debt. We want to go on big holidays each year. We want to purchase a new property or multiple properties. What does that look like on paper? And so it may have to start with you changing your mindset, changing certain habits. It doesn't have to be permanent, but until you achieve that goal, that's what you may have to do. And I think sometimes people are not ready to take that step. It's scary. It's the unknown. It's uncomfortable. And it's really important that you understand where you are.
How can
So it's interesting you speak about obviously the mindset, and we talk about at Meraki a growth mindset a lot. So what does a healthy financial mind look like in terms of financial health and well-being? What does that look like in terms of from your point of view?
So when I work with any client, I will take them through a 3-stage process. And the first process, the beginning of that process, is to uproot your finances. So it's understanding where you are at financially. What do you owe? What do you own? What are your assets? What are your liabilities? Ultimately, what is your net worth? What are you worth? You know, on a piece of paper, knowing that. And then being comfortable with it, owning it, you know, owning where you are. There's no judgment, you know. Then it's looking at your financial goals. What do you want to create? For everyone, it's different what they want to create. You know, as I mentioned earlier, it might be a luxury holiday. It could be building on your portfolio. It could be starting that business. Whatever it is, it could be getting out of debt. So that's the first stage, uprooting it, knowing ultimately what it costs to be you. How much do you cost? And then the second stage of that process is repairing your finances. And this is the real uncomfortable stage. The stage before is uncomfortable because you've got to face it. And that's where all those feelings come up, feelings of embarrassment, feelings of judgment, feelings of, can I really do this? And so the crossover for some people in terms of repairing their finances is, some people don't make it because they're not ready, so it's you have to be in the right space. You have to be, if you don't know what you're doing, you have to be coachable. If you have time on your hands, you've got to be able to be in a space where you want to educate yourself and that you do it. Because a lot of the time it's just accountability. We all, some of us are not opening our letters. Some people are putting off things. But we have to face it. So it's that sometimes people just need accountability, people to say, have you done this? If you do this, this will be the result. And so the repairing stage is, as I said, is very important. And depending on where you are, mentally, and, you can be in this stage for as long as you want to be. But that's where the real work happens, and that's where the action happens. So it's looking at, you're starting to track your money. You're looking at budgeting now. Budgeting for the year ahead, including all those birthdays, Christmas, planning for those holidays. We don't do that. Some of us don't do that. Let me be specific. Having that in so that when it comes up, you're not just like, oh my God, I need to do that. You have a plan in place. You have structure in place. But also going through your finances, going through what you're spending, because no doubt there's room in there for improvements. And typically I ask my clients a series of questions. And 3 of the questions are, number 1, do you need it? So you look through your finances and you're saying, do I need this? Or is it a want? Can it wait? And, for example, a lot of us may have, I don't know, home insurance, appliance insurance, phone insurance. We've got all these insurances, but do we need all of them? Can we just get home insurance and it's all fully loaded?
Yeah.
So that's what I mean when do we need everything? There's ways of saving money. Some of us have a lot of subscriptions. We have all the TV subscriptions. Do you need all of them? Are you even watching TV? So it's just some things to think about and make those changes. Another thing is 56% of the population are overpaying on their energy bills. We're so loyal to the energy companies that we operate with. Energy is energy. Do you know what I mean? And so we must look at our bills. We must be reviewing it and staying up to date and trying to get the best deals. Sometimes we're in phone contracts, for example, and the contract's ended, but we're still paying the premium rate. Can we just get SIM only? Do you need to upgrade your phone? So these are things that I go through my client, and we start looking, we start stripping things out. We start looking, do you actually need it? And people will realize just by looking at their finances, I sometimes don't even need to make suggestions because people are overwhelmed with where their money is going. They may realize that they spend 60% of their salary on shopping, food shopping, clothes shopping. 60%, that's very high. And so you have to understand where your money's going and why it's going there. Why does it need to go there? Can you make changes? Can you save your money? Another question that I like to ask is, can we freeze it? Sometimes we may not want to get rid of stuff, so you may look at freezing your expenses, for example. And I'm focusing a lot on expenses at the moment because a lot of the times people think, oh, I need more money. I need more money. It's not always about an increase in money. It's looking at how you can better manage your money. And with money management, it doesn't matter whether you're poor, middle class, or you're a millionaire. Everyone needs to have excellent money management skills. It's so important. So
well,
yes, I would say.
Sorry, Roneish, I was going to say, well, I guess if you can manage £100, you're then able to manage 100,000 or £1 million, right? So
absolutely. And so I was saying earlier about, potentially freezing some of your expenses. There are maybe subscriptions that you're not using at the moment, but you don't really want to let it go. So you may just put it on hold. Gym membership's another big one. Some of us have in our head, I've got to get fit, I must. And so they set themselves up in a contract. So they tie themselves into contract, but they're still not going to the gym. But it was their way of saying, by me paying it, I will go. But they're not going. Again, they're not in the right space. So if you're not in the right space, then just freeze it or just cancel it until you are in the right space, because you're just wasting money. Another question I like to ask is, are there alternatives? So earlier I spoke about your energy. Can you find alternative suppliers to do the same thing? Even when we go shopping, especially with, we're coming out of COVID, we're currently in a recession, shopping, we're working from home. So our food shopping bill is likely to go up. When we go shopping, can there be alternatives, for example? And it's so important that we understand what we value. So for example, bleach, for example. Do you have to buy a name branded bleach, or can you buy the value bleach, for example? Your bread, do you need to buy the branded one, or it depends what you value. You may have to have that specific bread, and that's okay, but there are alternatives just in your general shopping that you can potentially think about. And this is what it's about. It's about opening yourself to a new way of being, new habits. And this is what the repairing stage, as I like to call it, repairing stage, what it is. You repair your finances and you start to achieve your goals. It's small bite-sized steps to achieve your goals. Because if you said you wanted to clear your debt by you changing a supplier, for example, that money that you've saved, you can put that towards your debt. So it's about having a game plan. The money is already there. It's there a lot of the time. It's just because you need to know how to manage it, or you're not sure how to manage it. So it's just about creating structure and organization in your finances. And for some, it doesn't sound cool. For me, I love it. I can talk about this all day. But that's what it's about, and that's where it starts. And then the final stage is what I like to call the transplanting stage. So you move from where you are. You're no longer in the same place. Your mindset's shifted. You're changing the way you do things. I get messages now, my friend invited me out, but I didn't have enough in the budget, so I had to decline it. Or we only had starters, we didn't have a main course, and I love it. I literally thrive off those messages because it's working, and it does work. Whatever you focus on, there will be change. You'll see the change. And that, I like to call that stage elevation stage. And so that's what we do with our clients at Money Heave. And that's what I call good financial habits, good financial behaviors. But the first step, and I really emphasize it, is to know where you are at right now and just own it. No judgment.
I love it. Love the elevation stage and the transplanting as well, because it's very important, isn't it, that people embed it and actually apply the principles in everything that they do. I think for a lot of people, it's also time versus convenience, because sometimes it's easier to sign up to, what they have in front of them, or what their friend is actually signed up to, because, it works for them. but it's taking time out. That's what he's saying. Take time out to actually review what's in front of you, own it, and actually take action that's relevant and appropriate to yourself. We talked about Roneish. Sorry, Debs, did you want to ask a question?
Just a quick question, really, in terms of I was thinking about when you were speaking about the your clients, declining going out for drinks, and I was, why is it that people feel pressured into having certain things, having that handbag or going out for drinks when they know that full well they haven't got the budget? And I think it does actually equate to something to do with self-worth and self-value, and them wanting to be perceived a certain way, which isn't authentic. They're not being honest with themselves as well. But it's really important that people are honest with themselves. And one of the things you said about them owning who they are, accepting who they are with no judgment. So it's really about how they perceive themselves and accepting that, and not spending things and buying things they know they can't afford just to make them feel valued or feel
and also, just to add on that, no one's not saying you can't go on that holiday or you can't buy that bag. It's just planning for it, so it's not, so then you put yourself in more debt. For example, a lot of us are so reliant on our overdraft and our credit cards. Some of us see our credit cards and overdrafts as their own money. It's not your money. And I know that sounds a bit harsh, but that's the truth. And so a lot of people don't even have, they're in minus in their accounts, and they see it as normal to be relying on their credit cards because they may have a 0% credit card. They feel like they don't need to pay it off. You're still in debt. And so you have to create a plan for clearing that. And then what they do is they just transfer the balance every time the time frame of the 0%, different companies will give you a time period of what it's interest free, and then they just move from creditor to creditor. But it's about clearing that and creating structure for that. And then some people, on the other hand, they just see it as their money.
It's breaking that cycle, isn't it? It's breaking that cycle. At some point that needs to stop. Some point, you need to step back and reflect, and do what's right for you and your mental health and well-being. And we've talked about that, Roneish, mental health and well-being, and how individuals can actually improve their own mental health and well-being. We know that a lot of organisations who are helping, and supporting their employees in mental health and well-being, improving that, have employee assistance programs or equivalent in place. But a lot of those, from experience, focus on the physical side of things and getting people back into work. What can employers, in particular at this point in time, because a lot of people, whether they're on furlough or being made redundant, or, even organisations actually going under and losing their jobs. And losing a job is not just impacting them, it could impact their families, their friends, right? And as we've already talked about, their mental health and well-being. What can employers do now at this point in time, at this difficult time, to help their employees?
Yes, I think that's very good question again. And I think, as you said, rightfully so, a lot of employers are focusing on, eating healthy, fitness and things like that. But actually financial literacy is not on their radar. And I know companies need to start to implement, bring in financial coaches in to have workshops for their staff about financial well-being, how to manage their money. Because a lot of times, staff are coming in, they're stressed and they're not able to perform at their best. And so it's really important that they start to invest in financial literacy. It's not something that's taught in schools, and so people need to be educated somewhere. And so I think it's really key that they do workshops, even have sessions for people on a one-to-one basis, give that as an option to their staff. And also the diversity of it, getting, younger people like myself in to talk about finances, in a different way, not in the typical way that we think it's taught in. Money doesn't have to be boring, but when you can start relating to people start picking it up, people can start implementing little things. As I've said, earlier, it's about knowing where you are financially, and that there's no doubt. Literally every client that I've worked with, I've been able to immediately spot places where they can start saving money. I mean, every single client. And so we all can change things. I bet there's a direct debit you can cancel, or a standing order that you can cancel that you don't need. But because you haven't looked at your bank account properly, and I don't mean checking it every day to see whether you've got enough money in there to pay for your bills. I mean, literally sitting down and breaking it down, what's coming in, and actually calculating the total amount of money you spend, for example, on your household or on shopping. You'll be surprised where you can start saving money. But it's because people don't know where their money's going. They start getting overwhelmed. They start feeling anxious, depressed. And again, this doesn't have a positive effect on people at work. Their performances go down because they've got other things on their mind.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great example, the workshops in particular, I think, for not only employers, but also in schools, because you're right, it's not something that is talked about, discussed, or, even for kids who are going to university or moving on, it's not something that they are talking to them about in terms of how to manage, their finances and get by. So I think it's, a great example of, something that employers as well as, other institutions can actually do to support their people.
I agree.
So great. You know what I will be doing today? I'll be going through my direct debits.
Yes. Love it.
Through them,
and
just
let me know.
I will do that. But there's a lot that you've said today that actually I can relate to, because it's something that I've either been taught, I've learned. We learn things, in a hard way, don't we, through experience and things like that. So there's a lot that you said today that I think is great. That it's very practical in terms of the tips that you provided. Certainly, I will be showing this table talk to my kids, because I think it's really important for them to take what you said, and in particular the want and need. Do I want this, or do I actually need this? Because I think that is I think that should be applied in life in general when you're
and I was just gonna say, and also asking yourself the question, are they aligned with my goals? Are they aligned with my goals? Because if you're trying to clear your debt, or you're trying to save, having 5 different subscriptions is not in alignment with your goals if you are trying to save money, for example. So it's just identifying whether your habits are in aligned with your goals, and that's very key as well.
Just a point on the goals. I think one of the things that is very good in relationships to do, as we talked about money being sort of a common problem in relationships, is to actually collectively agree a financial goal. I think that would work. I mean, my husband and I have done that, and it just means that we're on track. We're kind of working to the same thing, and I think that can improve relationships as a whole as well. So
I think first of all as well, just actually having the conversation about money, because sometimes in marriages or in partnerships, people are still living as individuals, single. They're quite single-minded, but they need to come together and they need to discuss what's going on as a collective, not as individuals, because then it's like, you've got your goal, as you said, I've got my goal, and they may not even be in alignment. So it's about being in alignment with each other, knowing where both of you are at, who spends the most, who spends the less, you know, and just having some structure in place and a plan in place. You know, you having even an allowance of saying, you know, 10%, for example, of our salary we will spend on treating ourselves and doing all the things that we want to do. 10% we're going to save, 10% we're going to use to clear our debts, and then the rest of it we're just going to be focusing on our bills. That's what we have for our household bills. And so there's different ways of managing your money, but it's so important, as I said, to first of all have that conversation. And even if it's embarrassing, have it. If your credit score is poor, have the conversation, say it, own it.
There's so many tips, and I think, you know, we can go on talking to you forever, but so if anyone that's sort of listening to this table talk today, if they wanted to engage with you to get some more advice, where would they go to connect with you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the founder of an organization called Money Heave. And what we do, we typically work with time poor and stressed out professionals to elevate their finances. And as I mentioned earlier, we take our clients on a journey, a 3-stage process, where at first we look at uprooting your finance, then repairing it, and then transplanting it. And it's a cycle. And also, I just want to add to that, it's actually constant, because as you get around the cycle, you're going to have new goals. And so we're constantly elevating. But if you want to get in contact with me, feel free to message me directly on, I believe it's going to go on LinkedIn. So you can message me at Roneish, or message me on Money Heave. Or you can email me info@moneyheave.com.
We'll be sure to put those details on the video. Thank you.
No worries.
Great. Thank you, Roneish, for your time today. And look forward to hearing more from you and Money Heave.
Thank you. Thank you both for having me. It's been amazing, and I pray that this information blesses the listeners.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.